Hi, I'm Roy Collin, the host of the podcast. You can find everything about me by scanning the QR code there or going to roycollin.com. And you'll find my six podcasts, the Podfather, helping people become podcasters, the Awakening, Exposing Fraud and Corruption, but with solutions, the Crypto, all things blockchain technology, Meditation podcast, Speaking podcast, and the Learn Polish podcast. You can also help the show by actually making a donation, visiting the store, or helping my sponsors. I hope you enjoyed this week's show. Welcome to the Meditation Podcast. You can find all our episodes on the meditationpodcast.org. My guest today is Greek, living in London, the UK. He's a health consultant, personal trainer, author of Breathing for You, a breathwork expert, and yoga teacher as well. Please welcome Anastasis Tzanis.
Yes, nice to hear Roy. Anastasis Tzanis, yes.
Okay, I didn't. Yeah, it's a little difficult for me to
A
pronounce.
handful, right?
So,
Nice to be here.
yeah. So I suppose let's start because you were, I believe, a paratrooper. So I presume that's how your whole kind of journey getting into what you're doing. So you may kind of tell us how you got into that, what it entailed, and then how you kind of got into what you're doing now.
Sure. So I guess being a parachuter in the Greek Special Forces was the first formal job I had. And it lasted 1 year because that's how long the national duty in Greece lasts for. But obviously it's not something that you can easily forget. And also it will have an effect for the rest of your life, an intense of an experience as it might be. And as our listeners will figure out very soon, is that a lot of the lessons that I took from there, I found are relatable to other parts of life, such as corporate environments or even how we deal with stress. Obviously, being in special forces is not a relaxing environment, and maybe there are some lessons that people can take from there and apply it in non-military related aspects of their life. So the reality is that I ended up there because I had a big drive, a big interest on physical stress, on being challenged on a physical level. And it was true. It was challenging and it was revigorating in many ways. But at the same time, I realized while there that there was the mental stimuli, the mental aspect that was missing. Which fast forward like 3 years from then, I found satisfying this need for mental challenge and mental stimulation when I was then in banking and working as a currency derivatives trader, which I did for 6 years. And then I found that they're satisfying and stimulating as it was for my mind. It was not on a physical level interesting enough. And maybe I could say that my physical health was deteriorating while I was working in banking. So this kind of brought me to the realization that we have to keep some level of balance between the two. It was also the time while in banking that I started practicing yoga and meditation, and everything kind of came together in that respect. So that has been a synopsis of my journey in my first adult life, part of my adult life. And when it comes to my current job and my current, probably the conversation that we'll be having today on breathing, I think it is these challenges that I faced early in my life that kind of led me to write the book that I've written, to do the consultancy work that I'm doing at the moment.
And like trading is a very stressful job. And was it because it was stressful that got you into the meditation, the yoga, that you realized you needed an outlet to kind of relax?
Maybe that was part of what I was searching for at the time, but I wanted to make the following, clarify the following thing, that I'm not I don't believe that stress is necessarily evil or poisonous or even avoidable. I think that I see stress as part of life. I think anyone with ambitions, anyone with that wants to make the most of his time on this planet, will have a stressful events. And like the more probably one wants to make out of his life, the more stressful events he will experience. If you think of leaders and athletes and the people that we aspire to, probably they're the ones that have deal with the highest levels of stress. What is but what matters is that how we deal with it. And I think meditation is one of the best tools one can use to help himself deal with stress and not run away from it.
Right.
So yeah, partly was I didn't feel myself adverse to stress at the time. So coming back to your question, I was not running away from stress. I was very curious about meditation. I was very curious about improving my mental and cognitive functions, but not because I wanted to run away from stress.
Okay. And just with the meditation, then what ones did you start off with, and kind of what was your journey with different types of meditation, and have you got a practice today that you use daily?
Yeah. So I started off in the most popularized way of meditating, where someone is guiding the practitioners through, and there is probably as I perceive it at the moment, a non-stop delivery of information, stimuli, and so on. And that's fine. That I think that's very helpful. I think a lot of people, when they're starting out, they need someone to hold their hand. They need someone to keep them on track and not digress and have maybe going to monkey mind thoughts. So that was it, and I found it very useful, very interesting, very helpful at the time. It was when I started reading and learning more about Zen Buddhism and Zen meditation that I got more and more attracted to the non-thinking, no stimuli, empty state of mind, which in my perception at the moment is, probably what meditation is really at its heart. And that's probably what my practice is at the moment. I usually do it at the end of the day with my partner. Most of the times we just spend 10 or so minutes meditating before we go to bed. And that's it's quite simple. Now,
I've never heard of somebody actually say that they've done. I think that's a beautiful thing to do, that you do that with your partner, that you kind of have a kind of routine, because usually when I'm talking to people, it's like sometimes their partner doesn't get it and they just kind of go away. I've even heard of people, they go into the bathroom and that's where they lock the door and they have their peace and quiet. But the fact that you can kind of do it together, I think, is beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, she has a long lasting practice herself, and maybe we will review the day, we will catch up, but then just before we go to bed, we will say, okay, shall we meditate? And that's usually what we do, and it's a very good preparation for sleep, to be honest. Neither of us has challenges with sleep, but I consult a lot of people regarding improving, for sleep purposes. And I think it's a very good practice to drop the cortisol down, to empty your mind from anything that preoccupies you, and have a good night rest.
Very good. So with the breath work, because I mean, like you've written about it as well, but there's so many different types out there. I believe from the website, was it Wim Hof? Is that how you got into it by?
Yeah, perfect, correct. Yeah. So very briefly for the listeners to get a little bit of an understanding of where I'm coming from. So yes, it was 2015, and it was the very maybe if we was to take a step back, it was 2012 when I did my first yoga teacher training. I did two. And one of the things that I asked the guru that delivered the training, which was fantastic as a training, was that I want to leave the training knowing more about pranayama and breathing. And amazing as the training was, I didn't know anything at the end of the training regarding breathing. I left as clueless as I arrived. But that didn't put me off. I was teaching yoga, and then it was like a very short part of a podcast that I ended up listening, and I heard the interviewer saying, interviewing Wim Hof. Wim, for the people that don't know him, he's a Dutchman that exposes himself to extreme temperatures. He has a few Guinness records. He's really popular all over the world, but sometimes some people happen not to have heard of these amazing individuals. And one of the things that the interviewed told him, and it hit home for me, is that as part of the yogic tradition, yogis have been in the past exposed to extreme cold temperatures, extreme heat, and used their breath to moderate their body temperature. But nowadays, most yoga classes is more like aerobics, and this resonated with me. At the time I was teaching yoga, and I thought, okay, what I'm teaching is more close to aerobics than telling people how to moderate their breath. So it was 2015, very early days, probably the first international training that Wim did. I did the training. 1 year later, I finished it, and again, although we did a lot of breathing practices during the training, I knew again as little as when I arrived. Unfortunately, the background and the maybe a little bit of the knowledge of the course was very, very basic in that respect, and I didn't know what is going on during breathing. But anyway, a year later, 2017, I ended up studying with an Irish fellow for you Irishman called Patrick McCone, and that opened my eyes. Again, the course, although I learned a lot on the course, I still had a few questions. Because there are so many, as you said, breathing techniques, and how do they all fit? It seems like everybody can come up with their own, but the reality is that there is a structure in them. But in order for me to understand the structure, I had to go out and do my own research. Of course, a lot of it was helped by the workshops that I ran and the consultations that I delivered and the questions I've got from my clients and the students of the workshops. And probably partly because of also my background in banking and how organized my thoughts had to be while I was trading. You cannot be like intuitive when you're trading derivatives. You have to have a logic and a reason and have a structure in terms of how you perceive the markets and how you perceive your positions and so on. So I thought it was necessary for me to do it with breathing, which ultimately gave birth to my own system. It's called Free Breathing. It gave birth to the book called, as we mentioned, Breathing for Yoga. And from then on, I think when you have this structure and it serves you in one thing, and it serves you in respect to understanding what any breathing technique achieves in the body. You don't need to read any book because,
Except your one.
Well, but and again, mine, I perceive it is more as a system or as like a way of understanding. Like I call it free breathing because it helps people to communicate of who they have studied with, but it's not that I don't think that mine is. It's more of a system, like I said. So yes, and so with that understanding how any breathing technique can what effect any breathing technique can have on the body, then you look back and say, okay, what does also uses to bring people into meditation? What does other yogic traditions use as breathing techniques to bring Kundalini, to bring people into meditation? You name it. And you realize that basically a lot of them, they try to shut the mind down by shutting down supply of oxygen. A lot of the times we can have techniques that we breathe very fast, and they are technically called hyperventilation breathing techniques. They basically deprive the body, deprive the brain from oxygen, although we breathe faster because we get rid of carbon dioxide, and I don't know how much we want to get into the science of it. We end up depriving, as I said, the brain of oxygen. And then when the brain doesn't have enough oxygen, then they can also start it cannot carry on functioning the way it is used to. So we stop thinking. That's one technique. It's not the only one. Maybe it is an easy one for beginners. And that's why a lot of people that, for example, practice Wim Hof method, which is a hyperventilation breathing technique, they manage to get at the end of the breathing technique into meditation. But there are other techniques. And for sure, once these are techniques to get into meditation. I'm sure you know, and I would not be surprised if you do practice meditation without any particular breathing. The breath probably is very quiet during meditation. Your breath is very silent, very soft, but you're not after the breathing technique. It's almost a byproduct because the nervous system is calmed down. So that's one thing that I often discuss about is like, is it like a technique to get into our destination? Is it like the breathing used as a path to our destination, or the breathing technique is the destination itself? And I think when it comes to meditation, there is a particular softness and quietness in the breath at the destination, the meditation, and this is probably universal. Most people, when they meditate, they breathe in a particular way, but then the paths, the itineraries there can vary. As I said, a lot of them, very popular, Kundalini, Wim Hof, will be like hyperventilation. There are some others as well.
Right. I mean, I've actually met Wim Hof and did an ice bath with him, but it was in Jamaica. But and I was drinking with him as well. He's actually he's very nice. I love the way what he's trying to do for humanity and everything. But I've had a load of, I don't know, maybe 10 different facilitators at different events that I've got that. And I've got totally different experiences. I mean, I've seen colorful visualizations. At one stage I was in the water and we were kind of paired up and it felt like I was kind of being born and everything. But then, and I even bought a course on it. I went through the different things. There was different timing for the breaths. So I'd go, and I always felt great on it. But then I had somebody on saying that, is it dangerous that you're actually doing that yourself? And it was like more kind of just breathing properly. And I think that, so I've stopped the kind of going into it deep, but it's more like when I need it, I take deep breaths and everything. And I'm kind of conscious of that. And I feel I'm in flow and I know where I'm going and, you know, not anxious or anything like that. So like, I think there's a dangerous side to it as well, because like there's some people that kind of like they crave that. Let's say it's like what I've been told is like taking LSD. I have never took LSD, but it's like tripping without tripping. And is there like an addiction to kind of going for that?
You touched on a few points, and I will give you my very quick take on them. But if you think that it would be interesting for the audience, we can delve deeper. First of all, is the element of safety, and I'm confident to tell you that safety is not really there, especially for the general population. When it comes to hyperventilation breathing techniques, although they are so popular, they are not safe. And that, you know, anyone would only have to go on YouTube and Google adverse effects, side effects, and some popular hyperventilation techniques. I mean, I can give the names, but you know, it's up to the audience if you want to do their research, like rebirthing, conscious connective breathing, I think it goes sometimes under alchemy of breath. I think at some point I was invited to speak to one of their trainings. Holotropic breathing, like we mentioned a few others before, and see adverse effect. And the reason being is because of what I said, or partly of what I said. There is also the deprivation of the body of calcium that is needed for the nervous system. And as a result of these techniques, maybe you or some of your friends in Jamaica experience that, where there is involuntary contraction of the extremities that you cannot control. So people have they call it TRX hands.
Yeah, I had that at one event. I remember that. I was like, yep.
So this is because of the deprivation of calcium from the body. It is like you can find it in research and so on. Of course, in a healthy individual like you, no problem. But in people with neurological conditions, in people with cardiovascular problems, always with pregnant women. We always have to include this demographic in. So cardiovascular problems, neurological problems, and blood sugar regulation problems. It is only safe to say that they have to be extremely cautious when practicing these techniques. Yeah, so this is it in terms of safety. But yeah, whether it is addictive or not, there is an element, and this is again something that has been found in the Wim Hof practice, is that there is an increase of adrenaline that takes place during the breathing practice. And adrenaline, as I'm sure every one of our listeners knows, is addictive. I have paid my dues. I definitely can claim to be an adrenaline junkie for a big part of my life. Even after finishing the army, I was skydiving. I loved being on a motorbike. It maybe runs a little bit in my family as well from what I have heard from my ancestors. But why do we get addicted to also food or all these activities? Because of the adrenaline. We can get the same effect from breathing. Whether it serves us or not is a different situation. And again, is it always dangerous? Probably not. But we need to appreciate if we are under the high risk categories, and in that case, we need to act accordingly.
Yeah, excellent. And I suppose, we kind of touched on anxiety and stuff like that, because there is, especially now, you're in the UK, you can see it. Like, people are stressed to the hilt trying to survive. They're in survival mode. They're worried about, is there going to be World War III? Everything is kind of panic, which isn't helping anybody, because I think, the stress goes into your body, which in turn damages the cells, which in turn can cause cancer, which has gone through the roof. So it's kind of a knock-on effect. So, what kind of breathing, or what would be the best way of kind of reducing your fear, your anxiety, your stress?
So, Roy, the way that I discuss this topic in consultations or lectures is always by starting with an example and a parallelism, I should say. And the parallelism is the following. Being in a panic attack or an overwhelming stressful event that we feel we cannot handle can be considered similar to being in the sea while there is turbulent water halfway through a sailing trip. So if we perceive life as a sailing journey, at some point while sailing, we find ourselves, not anymore on the boat, but in the sea, fighting the waves and feeling a little bit helpless in some way. Now, there are different degrees of helplessness that people will feel with anxiety. Some know that they will get over it over a weekend, and some people feel like incapable of, and they sometimes even unfortunately terminate their lives, right? So there is we are all sitting somewhere on the spectrum at different times. So now we can think, okay, if breathing, and then a lot of people intuitively will say that breathing should be able to help. And I think they are right. But I think they don't appreciate how many ways the breathing can help. And I like to group these two techniques, these two group of techniques that people that suffer with anxiety can find the support through breathing. And the first one is to make them better swimmers. This is the most common example. So if you think of someone being in a stressful situation, you make him or her able to cope with the situation. So in this parallelism of the sailor being in the sea, who make him being able to swim better and as a result get back on his boat. That's one category. These are the breathing exercises that will calm the nervous system down. When you are in a fight or flight response, so will drop your heart rate, will slow you down. Plenty of them, they all work. A lot of them work, and they are all useful. There is a second, though, category of exercise, and this don't deserve, in my opinion, the amount of attention that they deserve, that they can make you a better sailor. And if you are a better sailor, you probably will not have as many episodes of swimming in the sea. And these breathing techniques are, again, it's not a mystery. There is tons of research, will make you a better breather, going back to speaking about breath work now, when you're not conscious of your breath. There is a lot of superficial, I think, focus out there about diaphragmatic breathing and slow breathing and consciously always breathing. I don't know how much time of this morning you've spent consciously thinking of your breath. I would expect that maybe you thought of it at some points, but most of it you went about your morning, day, having breakfast, doing your things without paying attention to your breath. And that's normal. Every one of our listeners probably did the same. But were they all breathing optimally? That's probably another topic altogether. And if we do the breathing techniques that will improve the way we breathe unconsciously, research has found that we are less likely to have a panic attack. We are less likely to go into anxiety. But this is a different group of breathing techniques. We cannot mix the two. It's one thing being better swimmer, another thing being better sailor.
With the yoga, because I mean, I suppose every kind of 3 months, I'd always pull my back out and everything. And it's nearly 2 years now there's a gym nearby. And I never went to the gym. I used to always play squash and in my younger days, like kung fu. And I was into motorbikes and, jumping out of planes and stuff like that. A bit of an adrenaline junkie. But since I do this classes it's called back and something else. But what I'm doing is, it's I suppose it's kind of like a bit of yoga in it, but you're putting your hands up, you're doing this, which I never do, but my back hasn't been sore since. And it's like, I don't think people realize how important it is, like the breath, but also the kind of yoga to have movement so that your body, especially if we watch like the aging process and everything, because you look at two different people, somebody can be in their 90s and they're flying along, and you have somebody else is 70 and they can barely move. And I think it's habits we have to get. So you might just touch on the yoga and how beneficial it is.
It is extremely beneficial. I mean, if I was to try to convince you of its importance, it would be like preaching to the converted here. But in case any of our listeners has not experienced any yoga practice, I would suggest to go and practice, because all the talking that I may do will not pay justice, or it will not be comparable anyway to them experiencing it in their body. Once they have the experience of one class, one session, they will feel it, and that's when they can potentially get hooked. That's when they can potentially see the value for themselves. In yoga, then we work on many systems. As you mentioned, it's the physical, it's the muscles that work in a particular way. It is the breath that is working in a particular way. But there are even other systems that also affect the nervous system, also affect how we deal with events, stressful events as well. And this is our proprioception. This is our visual cues, even auditory to some extent. So there is like so many elements that can all affect and improve how we are dealing with stress. I mentioned about this proprioception, and I think that's something that I'm very I think it deserves a lot more attention, because we live in environments, most of us, in the Western world, where they are very insulated. I'm spending a big part of my life in this room, 4 walls. How much does the room change day in, day out? Probably not much. Our ancestors probably were much more time outside, seeing the changes of the season, seeing the changes of the sun in the day, and all of these things, like the lack of these stimuli, shuts down our sensors and our perception of ourselves and the perception of ourselves in relation to the environment. Yeah. So when we are dealing with yoga, amazing, and I'm not trying to downplay the importance of the flexibility and the strength work and the breathing work, but I want to that's a lot of the times celebrated, and they deserve to be so. But I want to mention one additional thing, like I said, like the visual and the proprioceptive training that we do to our body during yoga. And it is, I think, through this type of work that we can improve how we relate to the environment, how we relate to other individuals, how we relate to ourselves on a day-to-day basis. Even check in with ourselves and understand that today I am stressed. How many people have you consulted? How many people have you met that they are a ball of nerves, but they are not aware of it? they may be tensing their jaws, cleansing their jaws, tensing every muscle or muscle in their face or neck, having lifted shoulders, poor posture, and they think they are normal. They go about their life. By the way, I have been like that. I was like that when I was in banking. They don't. So how can they get any? It's impossible for these individuals to get any help because they don't see themselves having a problem. They're impossible to even find any self-help, not help from outside, even to use any of the resources that you provide in your podcast. So that's something that yoga can make us much more aware, make us understand where are we today. Today, I'm relaxed, I'm rested. It may seem obvious to someone like you. I'm sure it is coming natural to a lot of the listeners, but in my experience, it does not come natural to everyone. And that's also one thing that yoga can be fantastic in terms of anxiety.
I've seen you in a video doing upside down with one hand, and I was like, that's insane. I mean, it's so impressive. Like, what amount of strength is needed to do that? Like, because I mean, there's very few can actually kind of, I don't know what you call it. Like, I mean, I could do it on a wall and do the, I mean, when I was in my 20s, I was able to do the knuckle push-ups like that. But to lift your whole body on one hand is incredible strength. And is that kind of down to the more like physical training, or do you put that the yoga has helped you in being able to do that?
Yeah. So you're referring to one arm handstand, and that's definitely a skill of that requires time, patience. I often tell to my students that among the things that you will definitely develop during this training is patience. Apart from the physical changes that you will develop, you would say it will change your personality because it's a very humbling process. And it's something that, yes, I often also compare it to the practice of tea pouring in Japan. Now, I'm not an expert on this, but I think in Japan they have some very particular activities that they practice very religiously. One is like, I think, the archers and that they throw the arrows, and the other one is how they deliver tea, and they have a very ritual on that. And I think with handstand is a very similar process. You can approach it in a very brutal way, in a very raw way of just putting your hands down, kicking up, and hoping for the best. And that's probably how most of us started. But then you can start trying to refine it and make it very precise. And over time, as you make it more and more precise, you can start progressing into having different positions, including the one arm handstand position, which again, it's an advanced skill, I would say. But I think in terms of bringing it back to what we were discussing, the way that in the process of falling in love with a practice, one thing that I was seeing as a benefit is the cognitive benefits. And I mentioned already how it takes a certain personality for someone to practice this, but also the cognitive benefits and the proprioceptive benefits. As a lot of people see the strength in it. A lot of people see the balance in it, but the balance and strength, this also requires a lot of proprioception. You need, if we go upside down, sometimes we lose orientation. And all of this is tested on a high level when you come to do this skill. So if any of our listeners is interested in that, of course, they can check out, social media and see what it looks like. But if they are curious to try, I'm going to tell them that in the process of doing that, they are very likely to become more intelligent, smarter. Because in the same way that a toddler has to develop a lot of neural connections in order to orient himself in space or herself and develop spatial awareness, when we go upside down, we have to learn this all over again. And in the same way that every time we learn a new language, research has shown that we decrease our chances of having Alzheimer's, and the aging improves, and all of these things, because we have to get our brain to fire in different ways to learn the new language, the new vocabulary, the new grammar. The same thing times 10 probably will happen when you start learning how to stand on your hands, because you will now be having to develop new neural connections that they are now at the time dead. it's possible for sure for everyone.
Yeah, very interesting, very interesting. And I mean, like we've talked about the breaths, we talked about the posture and everything, but another kind of core element of kind of everything in staying young, staying proper, is the nutrition. And I suppose we touch on that one because, like, there's everybody's has kind of their own opinions out there. There's like people saying, "Oh, just eat the meat." Then there's others saying, "Just eat the vegetables." I have seen both looking very ill. I've seen vegetarians that have changed their mind and gone back in it. I've seen people that are vegetarians that look fantastic on it. And I've seen bodybuilders that are vegetarians. And then I've seen people where they kind of say that you should do it for your blood, whatever blood that you should be eating a certain food based on your things. So, like, there's so much stuff out there. I mean, I can go in and do research and I can find pros and cons for every single product out there. And it's like, and they're kind of pay-per-view science. And it's like, it doesn't, you haven't a clue. What's the best way of people to kind of realize what's the best things to be putting in their body? Is it just staying in tune with how you feel afterwards?
Yeah, I think yes. So our body's intuition is amazing, and I think if in doubt, I think anyone is best off to stay with moderation. I think a lot of the things that you mentioned, like vegetarian diets, carnivore diets, ketogenic diets, these are all, I would dare to say, extreme, but extreme that they may serve a purpose, and they may serve a purpose, a specific purpose in a specific group and demographics. So we can say that, for example, like there have been certain cancers that have been found to be benefiting a lot from a vegetarian diet for a period of time, and other ones, including epilepsy, that have been found to benefit a lot from a ketogenic diet. There is the research. So, but this knowing that already helps us divorce the idea of one golden bullet, one ideal diet that will suit everyone forever. Most people, I think, can live very healthily on many different diets. Probably you adopted some different diets during your life, and you were healthy during both of them, or they are actually maybe no more than two. They are probably different ones, and you are still a healthy man. So obviously, none of these diets that you tried killed you. And maybe now you also don't follow one specific one. Like from a conversation that we have, you seem like an open-minded person and like probably open to try things and open to adopt different things in different times. Yeah, most people will eat very differently when they are at home and when they're on vacation, and they're still alive. So instead of going into the extremes, I think it is worth keeping in moderation, understanding that there is not one ideal diet, but there are different diets that will serve us differently at different times. And when it comes to the individualization of one's diet, I think yes, intuition can go a long way. The only issue that I would like to raise in regards to intuition, and which I think is very useful, is that intuition for most of us is uneducated. Our intuition is not educated. One example that I usually say is that if I feed myself French fries every night for 1 month, and after the next day after this experiment, I try to use my intuition to decide what I'm going to eat, it's almost guaranteed that my intuition will tell me to eat French fries. I'm not trying to vilify French fries, by the way. I like them. I'm eating them occasionally.
Well, but if you're talking about the ones at McDonald's, I found out recently they have 16 ingredients, so stay away from them.
Oh my God. Okay, yeah. But there are other probably healthier French fry options. But you see what I mean. So one thing that I like to do when it comes to consultations, and by the way, it's another, we're opening the can of worms here, but also we were speaking earlier about anxiety. Nutrition and gut health can go a long way towards anxiety. A lot of the times I had cases where people with anxiety would have candida or would have other problems in their gut. So breathing is one concept or aspect of it, but nutrition can be another. So one thing that I like to suggest, I do with a lot of my clients, is I try to train their intuition, train their body. And the way we train one's body is by exposing them to specific protocols. So, for example, one can adopt like a moderate fasting protocol and expose himself to a little bit of a break from eating. And then a lot of the sensors and the palate and the gut flora will be like trained to ask for different things. How will the body respond after this short period of time? The body learns how to what to ask. Another thing can be even like another thing that will train the palate and our intuition is exercise. We probably don't crave the same things when we are exercising more or when we are very sedentary, isn't it?
I'll give you an example. I started upping my ante with the gym, and I always have a sweet tooth. I don't have a sweet tooth no more. I crave chocolate. Like I could eat a full bar of chocolate. I tried to get high cocoa content, so then I don't eat as much. But if there's cakes or biscuits, it's gluttony the way I do it. And even my son now is looking. He's like, he wants an ice cream, and I go $9,000, and he's like, what you? So and like all I can see, the things that I'm doing different is I'm training a lot more.
So perfect. I think you could not have given a better example, Roy. So that's exactly it. If anyone is listening to us, I suggest they can start because it's useful also to give some practical tips away. Try by skipping one meal. Try to do for 1 week or 5 days, 16/8 fast, and see if your intuition changes afterwards. Try to increase and after maybe a few weeks, try to start going to the gym double the time that you did, or whatever activity, physical activity you do, just for 1 week, just for 2 weeks. It doesn't have to be forever. Increase how much you train. What is your intuition going to be like? Because these are stimuli, these are environmental. We have, our DNA and our gut flora and all of these things asking for things. Yeah. Nutrigenomics is an area where we look at one's DNA and we see what foods one's would someone benefit from and what supplements one may need more. And that's very interesting. It's part of my work. But what's more interesting, I think, is like the environment, how our environment interacts with our DNA. Because your DNA did not change when you were craving the 1 bar of chocolate a day. And now you have the same freaking DNA. But the stimuli, your environment, your lifestyle has changed. And that was enough to get you out of the habit, because now your body asks more for, I guess, higher quality, higher in more rich in nutrients food.
I'm just curious that, like, I know that a lot of people, they kind of advise against alcohol and everything. But if we look at, like, I mean, I've been to Greece. I love Greece. I think the food there and everything. But it's nice to have a nice glass of wine with it. Same in kind of like Spain or France. They tend to have a glass of wine with the thing. Is that something that's actually damaging you, or can it be a benefit once you don't like have a full bottle and just having like 1 glass of wine, say maybe 2 with your meal?
Yeah. So again, it will depend on who we speak with. I recently, I'm not at the moment, some of the people that I work with are, and that's very much, I'm repeating things that they have told me, alcohol, even in small portions, everything is relative, of course, like, have detrimental effects in their mood and in their digestive health. And for these individuals, again, I encourage to refrain, because what I want them is to train, educate their intuition, educate their gut, give their liver a break from this. But are we speaking to someone that is healthy, has a strong liver function, and would wake up the next morning without much of a hangover after 1 or 2 glasses? In that case, I think it goes more in terms of, actually getting the benefits of this relaxing, because there are so many additional molecules and the endorphins and so on that we will be producing when we have a nice experience and a social experience around alcohol consumption. So I'm not here to vilify alcohol. I'm not here to say that, you are diagnosed as having an alcoholism problem. Ignore that. Keep going. It's a matter of the individual. I think once they go through this process of exposing themselves into these phases of refraining, of cleaning, then these are the ones that can tolerate all of these things that potentially may also jeopardize. Does it make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, fantastic. Just finally, because I think it was a blog or something that you've written, but it was like you were talking about wrist pain. And I know it's kind of mentioning maybe arthritis and stuff like that, but I also think a lot of the kids now these days, because of the social media and constantly playing games and everything, that they're hurting themselves. So you might just kind of, what advice you could give with people that have issues with their wrist?
Yeah, well, it's a big topic, and it's probably one that it is a lot of people have it and they stay in silence because it's almost becoming normalized to have wrist problems. Wrist problems can be more debilitating than people perceive, because obviously whatever strength you have developed in your upper body will be limited to how stronger your wrist is. So in the same way that if you have problems with your ankle, no matter how strong your legs are, you will not be able to carry them. These are the last point in contact with whatever external thing you touch on. So, in that respect, I think they deserve attention. There is a lot. Risks are very complex. They very much depend on how the shoulder functions. And of course, depending on whether there are other joints that are also feeling vulnerable, I suggest the individuals look at them in a more holistic way and appreciate maybe if there is any systematic inflammation in the joints, which is very common again in people that have chronic problems. And, of course, there is osteoarthritis and so on. Joints are not easy to strengthen. Wrist joint is a little bit complex. Of course, if you work with an individual who has experience, they will definitely be able to help you restore. It is a matter of appreciating it in the general context of what is the whole condition of the body and working around it, working with it.
Excellent. Listen, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I must get your book because I like the way that you delve into everything and you don't just accept anything. You actually do a lot of research. So I'd like to go and get it.
Send you a copy.
Okay, brilliant. And then I'll have you back after I read it. So it'd be great. So you might let the listeners know where they can find you.
Sure. So best way is my website, but I'm staying quite active on Instagram as well. So Anastasis Tzanis is my handle on Instagram. And Tzanis.com is the name of my website. And maybe I can send you the URL and we can include them in the links below.
So I'll put both all your social media and the audio and the video. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ron.
That's all for the meditation podcast. Sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends, and comment on what we discussed. Until next week, take care.
So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. As mentioned at the start, you can find my 6 podcasts on roycullen.com or scan the QR code if you're looking to start a podcast or do a podcasting tour. I help with that. Also, if you're looking for a virtual assistant, we also have that service. And you can help the show by visiting the store, supporting our sponsors, or making a donation. Until next week, take care.